that. Good morning, everyone. You're very welcome. We will, in a moment, press a button to record the meeting. In fact, it looks like we might have already pressed the button to record the meeting, which is what we do as a matter of course these days. In the interest of anybody who wants to observe the meeting, who can't obviously come to the hospital now, but also for people who would like to look at it subsequently, either through interest or to examine any particular area of our business. So that's what we do. I'm really pleased that we're joined by a number of our new governors this morning. So it's very diligent of you to be coming to board already. The board really appreciate when governors make the time to join us, because, you know, it gives you a real bird's eye view of what's going on in the trust. So I'm just going to go around the table, forgive me calling it the table, but you know what I mean, in a few minutes. So new governors can say hello. I've had the pleasure of meeting you the other day, but most of my colleagues won't have. So I think it's important that we make a little bit of time to do that. But before we do that, there's two other announcements. One is just to say that unfortunately Atul is not feeling well, Atul Patel, so we have his apologies for today. If he has the opportunity to dial in later, just so we can hear what's going on, but he won't be up to participating, so we send him our best wishes for a speedy recovery. And the other important announcement is, of course, the fact that this is Tony Campbell's last board meeting, as he goes to take on the Strategy, People and Partnership Directors, a role at DHU. So, Tony, we have an opportunity in the diary on Friday to say a really thorough and proper thank you to you. But I would like to say a few words on account, if I may, not least of all in this public forum, about what a magnificent colleague you've been over 8 long years, 6 of which I have had the pleasure of working closely with you during. And as I have reflected back to on a number of occasions, Tony, we were very lucky to have your very interesting and unusual skill mix. You know, the training of a chemist coupled with the rigour, discipline and excellence of a long and prestigious career at Rolls-Royce. Having been inducted in the ways of, I won't say the force, but the NHS in Derby, and coming to us with that lovely blend of skill and insight. And I've said 2 things to you, Tony, which might be a bit boring for you to hear again, but I think colleagues should know. Tony's leadership style has been one that has wide and far across the trust, Tony. But also your approach to change and improvement has been one that has meant that whatever it is you've set out to improve hasn't been kind of, you know, today's flavour. They have been things that have been properly done, and I feel absolutely sure will be a legacy to the trust, because they will have brought about sustainable change and improvement. And on Friday we will list them all out. But this morning, just be assured that we're extraordinarily grateful to you, Tony, for all of that. And we're so pleased that we're not losing you to the system, because, you know, somebody of your status and capability, is lovely to think that the community you've served will continue to be served in the way that you have hitherto. So a huge thank you from all of us, Tony.
Thank you, Helen. Very kind words. And to my board colleagues, I can only thank you for the support, and governors. You've been amazing over the time in terms of support to me, which has allowed me to do some of the things that you've described, Helen. So thank you very much. And no doubt I might think of the odd word more on Friday, but not much more. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Tony. Now, I'm conscious that we've also got colleagues on the call who are joining us for the staff story, so I'm not ignoring you. You're going to get centre stage in a moment. But before we do that, I would like to introduce our new governors. So if I just go around the table and maybe you would just say a quick word about who you are and where you come from. Can we start with you, Pervez, please? Or you need to come off mute.
Can you hear me now? Right, Pervez Iqbal, retired surgeon physician and public governor from North East Derbyshire.
Thank you very much, and thanks for joining us. Graham? Button, Graham. Graham's system doesn't seem to be working, but I can tell you that Graham is the publicly elected governor for Bolsover, and has had a long and interesting career in engineering and a lot of union business too. So welcome, Graham. Sorry we can't hear from you, but we will at a future date. We've got Eddie Lewis, a staff governor. Do you want to turn on your camera and give us a wave, Eddie?
Good morning. My name's Eddie Lewis. I'm the staff governor for all other staff. I'm also got a day job. I'm the ICT program manager of the trust. I've been in the trust for about 13 years now.
Very good, and you're very welcome. Now, I can't see on my screen, maybe I should be looking for a list if there's any other new governors that should be saying hello to us. Just wait till I have a quick look. I don't think so. But if I have missed, there's old governors, of course. Good morning, John Bolt. You're well known to us and as welcome as ever. But if I have missed any of you, feel free to.
Good morning, Helen.
Pardon? Sorry, who was that? Ah, never mind. Anyway, if I have missed any of you, a cheery wave in both directions, and thank you again for making the time to come. So that brings us on to the register and declaration of interests. I'm going to take it that they are as recorded unless I get any indication in the chat or by hand that anybody has any declarations, additional declarations to make, or any particular conflicts of interest to declare in respect of this morning's agenda. So I'll take that as a no. Thank you very much. And that brings us on to our board story. So we're very grateful to colleagues who've joined us. I can see Indranil's name on the icon, so welcome to you, and perhaps I could pass the baton for you to do some introductions of colleagues you brought with you, please.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, the new governors, transport members and colleagues. I am Indranil Dutt. I'm the clinical director of Obs and Gynae, and I have Fancy, who is one of our nursing colleague. So we are here to study about some stories of some future. Should I start, Helen?
Please.
Right. So we have shared that Trust approached me last year to lead the BAME staff group or network, which never took place because COVID came in. So I did a video of 2 minutes and 1 second in May, in summer. Probably you have seen that video, which was shared previously. And if you haven't got the chance to see it, please do see it. Now, then we have worked from August relentlessly, and many thanks to Zoe, Trudy, and my other colleagues to make an engagement of the BAME colleagues and lead that in Chesterfield. Now, summer has gone, we are in winter, and we are in much greater height of COVID pandemic at the moment. But we have done a fantastic job with the support from the Trust and Angie. We have formed a Royal Cultural Committee, which is maybe the platform for the BAME staff, but it is for inclusiveness of all the staff and to exchange and their thoughts and culture and know better their colleagues, because that is the key thing in equality and diversity and inclusion. Now we have been able to form a Be Yourself group. We're working hard. We have made some improvement also. And as a member of Chesterfield, we should be proud that our risk assessment for BAME staff has been improved. It was revised a few times, and very happy that the BME staff colleagues are all vaccinated, which is an excellent news. And I thank the operational team for that. Now, we have the situation of BME colleagues in whole NHS in private and public sector was certainly a problem to note beforehand, and COVID definitely has exposed some other key areas about the increased rate of death or disability or demise. And being an obstetrician, that is also very much important because of more increased risk of death and disability in pregnant women. So it's a long way to go for us. COVID eventually will stop someday, but I'm proud that we are doing a great work for our BME colleagues in the trust, and which is an NHS England agenda too. I'll not take much time, but as you know that there's a big need for national redeployment of doctors, staff and nurses. We have to be, again, very careful for safer redeployment, which is very much necessary for protection or preventing the ill health of our staff, including the high-risk staff of white ethnicity background. So we are certainly will be working on that. And if you have any questions, you can ask me, then Pansy can take over.
Morning, Pansy. It sounds like you might be getting the short straw of answering the questions, but I'm equally confident it won't be any trouble to you at all. We did query whether or not we should be having a staff story this morning on the basis that we're trying to really curtail the length of our meetings, and also not draw on colleagues' time who need to be elsewhere in the trust. And I was assured that you were happy to come. And I'm so pleased you have. I really am. And I'm very grateful to you, because it's lovely to hear that first-hand account of how it is we're supporting BME colleagues at a time that's worrying and concerning for every member of the trust and every member of staff, but particularly with the heightened risks and issues for that group of colleagues. So that first-hand account of even the fact that we've achieved all the vaccination programme for those colleagues is super, as well as all the stuff you're doing day in, day out through the Royal Cultural approach. So thank you very much. Would anybody like to raise anything, or are we content to offer our thanks and appreciation to Indranil and Pansy? Jeremy.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Indranil. Just very briefly, I'm absolutely delighted that you've got this group up. Indranil, you may not know, but I chair the People Committee, and I'm the supposedly health and wellbeing champion on the board. And I'm particularly pleased in that context to hear that this group is up and running, because I know 2 years ago, I remember having conversations with Zoe about how we can make sure that the BME voice is heard in the hospital system, and we struggled a bit with it. So it's really, really good to hear this. And if I may, I'll come back to you separately after this meeting and have a further conversation about how we can take that forward. But it's really great to hear your news. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy. Zoe.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Indranil. I just wanted to give Pansy the opportunity, if there's anything particularly briefly she wanted to add, and also take the opportunity to welcome Taraj Singh to the Trust and introduce her to the board. Taraj is here just observing the board story today, and she's our new Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Facilitator. Joined us last week, which is a new role for the Trust, so supporting the diversity and inclusion side of things from a workforce perspective. So I'm really pleased Taraj is with us too.
Thank you, Zoe. Is there anything you'd like to add, Pansy?
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Zoe, for introducing me. So, as I said, Ms. I work as a clinical operation, and I'm for the last 20 years. I was part of the first foreign nurse recruitment, which was carried out by the years back, and I'm still here. So that's good about it. That's the longest I've ever stayed, place, a position, a country in my life. Have been exacerbated by team, which led to the formation of the committee. Already, even though it was just formed last year, for the past few months has gathered momentum and already doing such positive as you know, highlighted by regarding the PM colleague. And I have a lot of hope for the future. There are a lot of stories that all of us see, both positive and negative, but I have hope that all these differences can be put aside. We all work together, for our institution. We need to, and it is only by submerging our differences that we can actually achieve these common goals during this trying time. And I thank everyone for supporting us and this committee in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Pansy. Tarek, would you like to say at least hello, not least of all, so we can all know who you are and recognise you when we see you in person?
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, my camera's not working, but yes, I can say hello. So hello to everybody. It's a pleasure to be in this meeting and to meet you all. My role is to support the networks, and it's my second week and I'm getting to know everybody, and it's lovely. It's a lovely atmosphere. And going forward, I do, my role is to obviously push forward the diversity agenda, and I can feel and I can see that, people want to make improvement, and it's so reassuring. And I do welcome any conversations, if you want to have, a private meeting, that's fine. Just talk to me, get to know me, I'll get to know you, just to kind of open up the agenda, really. So thank you to everybody.
Well, thank you for joining us. It sounds like we've an opportunity now here to redouble our efforts on an agenda of diversity, equality, inclusion that is very important to us. So lovely to know that you're coming, and lovely to have had such concrete examples today of the difference that this focus is making to colleagues across the Trust. So a big thank you to Indranil, to Pansy and Tarek. Much appreciated, particularly making the time to be with us at such a busy time.
Thank you.
So that brings us on, if we may, please, to our next agenda item, which is the report from the Chief Executive. As with all the items today, we're going to take them as read, but would appreciate, Angie, anything up to the minute that you might want to add, or a notice of anything in particular you would appreciate us turning our attention to in the discussion.
Thanks, Helen. And I wanted to, first of all, give a big thanks to all our staff. So thank you, Indranil, Pansy and Tarij, for giving me a good introduction there to the Chief Exec report. As always, the report is out of date the minute we write it, but just to underline the extreme pressure that all our staff are under today, and for board to acknowledge that in terms of saying thank you, and also thank you, Helen, for curtailing the agenda and supporting us all to support everyone in caring for our patients. We have 160 COVID positive patients in our beds today, 16 of whom are in critical care, which board will recall our peak was high 70s. So we've more than doubled our first peak of COVID positive patients in our trust. And clearly that is presenting operational pressures every day. I'll let Alison and Berenice draw out from our F&P conversation some of those key messages around the operational side. And Zoe and Jeremy, I'm sure, will touch on the people support and absence and work that we're doing to make sure as best we can we're supporting our staff every day at the moment. Two other key messages from COVID, as well as caring for those ill patients. We are continuing to ensure that all our staff have access to lateral flow tests. So the testing support continues. Clearly presents us with challenges when staff are having to isolate through that process, but important that we continue to support that. And the vaccination programme that Indranil mentioned earlier, brilliant support from all our staff to make sure that got up and running as a hospital hub with some very short notice changes a few weeks ago. So we've made excellent progress and are on track to get all our staff vaccinated over the coming weeks. So thank you again to everyone for that. In terms of the agenda today, Helen, just a couple of points to highlight where we'll focus our discussion. In Joined Up Care Derbyshire, we won't go through the detail, but just to formally acknowledge at board the formation of the ICS and clearly are thinking about, which feels very hard at the moment, our strategy and going forward. That's in the context of us being a key partner in that ICS. Lots happening nationally and locally around some of those discussions. And we may not get time today to draw out all the thinking we want to do on our strategy, but we thought it important to get the draft to date in front of you. Not least because Tony can then take the credit for the work he's done to date and will continue to do. I keep reminding him he's not leaving really, because he will continue in his ME2 pathology role, which is a key example of our strategic direction and the network work that we're doing. So opportunity to touch on that later, but also just to remind board members that we've got some time at our informal board in February to progress that discussion. And thank you to those who've already sent comments, which is really helpful as you're developing this kind of document. And I think important as well, both in my report and in the strategy, to keep focused on all the amazing positive work we're doing through the Royal Academy of Improvement and through keeping focused on key strategic issues such as our Green Plan, that again feels very hard when we're pressured every day to be focused on those operational priorities. So I'll stop there, Helen. Happy to take any questions, but hopefully that's focused some of our discussion today.
Thank you very much, Angie. Colleagues like to come in. Zoe.
Thanks, Helen. I thought just about to say a little bit about these wellbeing support, if now's an appropriate time to do that. So obviously we talk about this every month, so I'll just talk a little bit about the extended things we've been doing over the last month or so. So we've continued to work with Ashgate Hospice, which, as board colleagues know, have been a great support throughout, and the feedback from those sessions have been fantastic. So we've extended and continued the offer now, so that involves huddles, team briefing, one-to-one counselling now, so some slightly longer term support. There is a working group, which, thank you, Jeremy, I know you're close to that too in your health and wellbeing guardian role, so thank you, I know that's really appreciated. This week, where I've been talking to the chief nurse at Derbyshire Healthcare, so the mental health trust in the community, about the support that her and her team can provide for our staff in terms of psychological support, particularly for those working in the critical care areas at this particularly intensive time. So that's something we're mobilising shortly.
Thank you very much, Zoe. That's really important that we understand how you've managed to extend the offer. I'm sure colleagues will benefit enormously from that at this time, so thank you. I think everyone's content to note that report, Angie, and as you say, there's opportunities further on the agenda for some deep dive around the performance issues, so thank you for that. That brings us on to agenda item 5. For those who are attending their first board meeting, it's probably worth explaining to you that agenda item 5 is a very big and important agenda item, because it combines not only the board's review of the board assurance framework, which is the kind of lens through which we examine risk at the board, risk vis-a-vis our strategic intention, but it's also the opportunity we have to hear the reports from each of the committee chairs, and the committee chairs, the committees, I should say, are the place where the integrated performance report gets a deep dive. So if you're thinking, oh, they didn't spend a long time looking at that, that's because it's had a lot of pre-work and attention in the committees. So it's an important opportunity for us, this agenda item 5. That said, you might discover that the shorter committee reports today, not least of all because there's some items further on the agenda that speak to areas that the committee have been focusing on, but just to explain that by way of context. I think I should also say that we now have 2 members of the public who are joined on our live stream. And obviously we can't see you, but just to say that you are very welcome, and that there is a facility on your screen to raise questions. Now, we don't normally take questions from members of the public in the meeting, but in these strange and uncertain times, we'd be very happy to take anything you may raise at the end of the meeting. So please feel free to participate in that way, should you wish. So I'm just going to go in the first instance, if I may please, for the committee chairs' reports. So Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Helen. The report, I'm sure you've all read it. I don't have anything particularly to add to it, but obviously we're very happy to answer questions. So yeah, any questions, please fire away.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Alison, finance and performance.
Thanks, Helen. So just to update board, our latest finance and performance meeting was on Friday. And dealing with performance first, we had a comprehensive update from Berenice on current performance within the hospital, and the overall sentiment of the committee was to support the challenging circumstances and all the work that the execs are performing at the moment to keep the hospital running with COVID and the vaccinations and other areas. I think one key area to highlight within the IPR is that some of the statistics may look a little strange. That's because there's a specific definition of the performance percentages that doesn't take into account patient choice around not attending for various clinics. So some of the percentages may look a little strange, but that is through patient choice. We did debate whether to amend some of the risk scores for performance, and given that some of the metrics are going to change in 2 months, we said that we would review the BAF scores in that timescale. So Berenice, I don't know if you want to add anything before I move on to finance. Is there anything you want to add?
Sorry, Alison. I'm just struggling to get it off mute. No, I mean, Alison's covered everything. All I would add to it is that for this month's finance and performance meeting, we had provided a bit more detail into a number of pathways: dermatology, breast 2-week wait, endoscopy, and ophthalmology. And it was just to reassure that despite the challenges that we're facing, we are targeting specific areas that we're certainly concerned about in the organisation. And we've reassured Alison as chair that we will continue to monitor that and set trajectories for that improvement. That said, I think even since we had the meeting on Friday, given the current challenges that we've had and the instructions from NHS E&I around cancellation of priority 3 and 4 elective cases and standing down of non-urgent outpatients, will absolutely impact on our performance for the next report. So thanks for that opportunity, Alison.
No, you're welcome. And just to reiterate for board, very, very assured and supportive of the difficult decisions that the execs are needing to make to balance resources and demand at the moment. And then moving on to finance, obviously the financial regime is very different this year. But to update on the finance position, we're now forecasting a surplus of 2 million for the hospital this year, with some mitigating actions still required. But that's where we're expecting to be. And from a system point of view, we're expecting to be a break-even position as a Derbyshire system. So that's a significant change from last month's finance report. Lee, I don't know if you want to add anything onto that commentary.
Thanks, Alison. Very quickly, I've now seen month 9 for both the trust and the system. We're still within the allocation for the trust, and in actual fact, we've got some headroom against the allocation across the system, so we're discussing that as a DOFS group. So of all the things we need to worry about at the moment, money potentially isn't one of them up to the 31st of March. We'll perhaps need to worry from April Fool's Day onwards, but we don't know what that worry needs to look like yet.
Thanks, Lee. So obviously we're still managing our finances in an appropriate way. But the priority at the moment is performance within the hospital and ensuring that our patients are safe. So that's my overall update. I don't know if there's any other questions, Helen, or whether you want to move on.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Alison. Are there any other questions of Alison in respect of the performance or the finance? No. Well, if there are, we can return to them in a moment. So thank you, Alison. And Jane, please, for Quality Assurance Committee.
Good morning, everybody. So we had a meeting on Monday, which was a deep dive meeting looking at maternity care, and that forms a standalone item later in the agenda. So if that's okay, Helen, I think we could pick it up there, and there'll be a presentation from Krishna and also some contribution from Helen and myself.
Thank you very much. I also know that the Quality Assurance Committee has been very engaged in the whole matter of stroke, and of course we've got a substantive paper on that too. So big thank you to you and members of the committee for your attention to both of those important issues. So I'm going to suggest, Angie, that we kind of go more or less seamlessly into your update now on the work of the Task and Finish group around our whole approach to the board assurance framework, please.
Thanks, Helen. And just to say thank you, first of all, for the group for working together on what our BAF can look like going forwards. You'll remember from last update that we're aiming to keep this as strategic as it needs to be, streamlined while still giving the level of detail that we need. And obviously we're updating our strategic objectives and alongside our new strategy, and that will shape the way we look at the BAF and the risks. This hasn't got as far as I'd have liked, given some of the challenges we've had. So grateful to people who have already commented. It does actually make it easier to have some collective thinking once you start to put something down on paper. So I hesitated slightly about putting something in front of you, but it is very much thinking to date, and grateful for all comments as we work over the next couple of months to finalise both the strategy and the BAF that then supports us in that assurance around the risk for our strategic objectives.
Thank you, Angie. That's helpful. I don't know if I might go to you first, Alison, because of course you'll be very close to this in the context of performance and finance, and also Mike, whether or not there's anything you want to add to Angie's comments from the audit committee perspective.
Thanks, Helen. Sorry, Mike. Just to say that you know, we've recognised that it's an appropriate time to update our BAF and the risks that we're articulating. I think that, you know, the risks that we would expect to see are on there. As Angie says, there's a little bit more work to do on sort of causes and risk descriptions and impacts, that therefore we can plan mitigations, but it covers all the areas that you would expect to see in terms of patients, staff, people, finances, operations. So I think it's a good step forward to where we need to be.
Thank you, Alison. Mike?
Yeah, I'd echo that. It's clearly there's a bit more work to do, but it clearly isn't a priority at the moment. But there's a really good framework there that we can start to hang a bit more detail off when we have an opportunity. So it's been a bit slower than we thought, but it's going to be a quality output when it's finished. So we just need to be patient for a few more weeks. And of course, you know, our intention to make sure that it's completely aligned with the emerging strategy is important. But I think, you know, if we examine our conscience, I'm not in any way concerned that we don't have a means of tracking risk at this really critical time for the operation of the hospital. I think we do have that mechanism, but I'm equally grateful that we're iterating that mechanism at this time to make sure it's fit for purpose in the context of a new strategy. So so well done to everyone who's looking after both sides of those that equation. Much appreciated. Thank you for the report and update to Angie. So I'm going to leave agenda item 5 there unless I see any indication of anybody wanting to consider any of those matters in the round. Zoe.
Thanks, Helen. Can I a quick thought while I'm thinking it was around the people one, and could we talk about a diverse workforce as well, perhaps as well as a right workforce? And I didn't know whether we want to talk about right skills or whether that was just implied. Oh, sorry, while it's in my head, Angie.
Yes, no, that's really helpful, and we'll capture that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jane.
Thank you, Helen. I was just typing to say, under the first example on patients, I wonder when we say care and services, we might actually refer to outcomes. I think that's probably what we mean, and I understand we mean it by potentially by inequalities, but I think we ought to be more overt about outcomes. Thank you.
Yeah, another helpful addition. Thanks, Jane. When and how will we see this next, Angie?
Informal board on the whatever the first week in February is. And thank you for those immediate comments. Those fresh eyes again on things are really helpful. So please keep them coming. And next iteration will be at informal board first week of Feb.
Excellent. Thanks very much. I'm going to move us on then, if we may, please, to we've done 5 and 6. I'm going to move us on to the next session, which is about our vision and strategy, and we have in front of us a draft trust strategy. So it looks like it's a duet between you, Angie, and Tony. Are you leading off?
I'll kick us off very briefly because I've touched on it a couple of times already in the same spirit as the BAF as well. This is very much a work in progress. Thank you to Tony, Maria and Sarah for their support. Again, not got it as far as we'd ambitiously set ourselves, but not a bad thing, I think, at the moment, given some of the discussion happening nationally and locally around place and provider alliances and how we fit into that, and also all the learning we're continuing to do as we work through COVID. So it's actually working well. What we need to keep doing is lifting ourselves out of the operations and having that strategic focus, which Tony has kept me in good check on, and I'll rely on all of you to carry on doing that as we work through. Again, next iteration will be at informal in February, but I'll hand over to Tony to draw out any key points he wants feedback on.
Thank you very much, Angie. Tony.
The only comment I'd make to board is if you can visualize it as a quite literally a document, a booklet, even in the electronic world, such that you could be reading it at your leisure. So there's still a bit of work to be done in terms of some of the graphics and sharpening it up. But not only a strategy, putting the context in the system and the context that we operate within that, but actually the forward plans and our ambitions, which is later on in the document in terms of what we expect to be doing over the 5 years. And clearly that's quite a good crystal ball gazing stuff to be done and a fair bit of work to be done. But the shape is there. If you consider it that way, then as Andrew says, the content will develop over the coming weeks and months. That's all I would add.
Thank you very much, Tony. And as we've all on notice that it's quite soon we'll be doing that. Jeremy.
Yeah, just a couple of points. I recognise obviously that this is work in progress and look forward to having more detailed discussion. One thing that did leap out at me was that it's still described as strategy 2020 to 25, and that doesn't sound quite right given that 2020 is history now. So that's just one thing that needs adjusting, and I look forward to seeing some smarter actions in it. But the detail of that obviously is for discussion in future.
Thank you, Jeremy. Very good. Well, we look forward to returning to that on the beginning of February. Before we conclude on that item, I'd like to say a big thank you for the extent to which we've involved not only our staff but trust members and the wider community, and the fact that there has been that opportunity to take a range of stakeholders' views on the strategy. Will there be an ongoing opportunity for that dialogue for anybody who wishes to take it up until the point we kind of put the strategy to bed at the beginning of the next financial year, or not? I see Sarah nodding. Sarah, you've done a huge amount of work on this. Can you tell us what your next plans are?
Yeah, what I've done is I've retained all the contact details that for everybody who's contributed so far, and the plan is to share the next iteration with them so that they can see how they've contributed and helped shape the final product.
Super, thank you, Sarah. Angie.
And just also noting we've got some of our new governor colleagues with us, then there is a governor meeting, I think that's 3rd of February. So again, that draft there and that opportunity to comment in the meantime or on that date would be welcomed.
That's super. Well, we've seen through COVID what the importance of the partnership we've had, not only with our patients and with our staff colleagues, but with the wider community. And people have been so forthcoming in supporting us. And, you know, post-COVID, I'm sure there will have to be changes to the way in which it is we provide care. And the more closely they can be informed by the people who use those services, the better they'll be. So I'm really delighted with all the work we've done to date and really pleased to hear that we continue, you know, we're planning to continue to have that dialogue. And of course, when we agree the strategy for the start of the next financial year, you know, it's not going to remain unchanged over the following 5 years. So I think it'll be important that we continue to offer that opportunity at review points and such like. So well done for taking that approach to the whole endeavour. So that's very helpful. That's item 7, which now brings us to item 8. Which is the patient and staff experience report. And again, we've another duet by Krishna and Zoe. I'm not sure which of you would like to lead off.
Shall I start, Krishna? I will. The only thing that I really want to highlight from the report was that we will be reviewing the exec sponsor teams in March. So this report includes the response rates in terms of the staff survey for each of the teams. Once we've got the data of the actual feedback and what people said, that's when we'll have a look at the priority teams in the round alongside all the people and the patient metrics as we did last year. So yeah, that'll be the next steps. And the report includes the usual sort of around the room around exec sponsor activity.
Very good, and is very full and comprehensive in that regard, and been really helpful to get a flavour of the extent to which our executive colleagues in particular have maintained visibility in every nook and cranny of the trust throughout this period. So that report is as heartening as it is assuring. So many thanks for that. Krishna.
No, I didn't particularly want to add too much other than perhaps just to sort of reflect on perhaps one of the areas of our staff that just demonstrates just how responsive our staff have been. And that sort of, I've been liaising with the Portland team who, since I've been liaising with them, haven't quite been the Portland team. So they moved lock, stock and barrel into critical care to work as RB nurses and did that for initially 2 weeks, but actually did it for 5 weeks. They moved back onto their existing ward. They changed specialty from being an elective trauma orthopaedics into being another COVID positive ward with our increasing numbers. And they did that absolutely seamlessly. And one of the, linking back to what Zoe was saying about the health and wellbeing offer, we were really conscious that this team, having been in critical care, would probably need additional support. So they've been receiving some of that additional support through Ashgate Hospice. And actually a number of those staff have already approached and are already back working within critical care. And we've already got another number who want to work back in critical care, and we're just sort of facilitating that at the moment. So it's just a demonstration of just how fantastic our teams have been really, and how responsive to the changes that we've needed them to make.
Thank you very much, Krishna. I'm conscious that this report is unusually light in terms of patient experience. You know, we understand why, with the suspension of much of the friends and family activity for reasons of infection prevention control and indeed pressures on time. But we have spoken on a number of occasions about how we have a real ambition to have a kind of more 21st century approach to real-time feedback from patients that's informing immediate responses and future changes and improvements. So I think it's probably just important that we we take an action to make sure that in the middle of everything else we're contending with, that isn't lost, and that we find the right opportunity to keep the right level of focus on it through this time. But you know, the report that is there is much appreciated. Jane.
Can I just second that, Helen? Because I think we've been, in a broader sense around patient experience, we've been tackling patient experience thinking about the reporting that comes through QAC. And it does seem to me that it's more about digital and about transformation than it is about us looking at the metrics. So in order for us to get to that sort of real-time feedback and move it on a little bit, I think we kind of just need to shift the focus a little bit. So that's not to move the focus from QAC, but it is to say I think we need to take a different approach. So I absolutely agree with what you've just said.
I think there's a corollary to that, isn't there, which is, and I joined a Royal Academy of Improvement session yesterday lunchtime, and it was super hearing about the improvements. There were about 3 different improvements that have been made to the cancer pathway, and it was very exciting to hear what was being done, and it was really assuring to hear the focus there is on meeting cancer deadlines and enhancing the service in such a way to meet cancer deadlines as far as we can during this period of time. But I think we're very conscious that we have a really good resource there. And whilst we've had a couple of years of improvement ideas bubbling up, there may be an opportunity in the light of our strategy discussion to think about what elements of the strategy will particularly benefit from some of that knowledge and skill and capacity that's within the transformation and improvement team. And I can't help but think this whole patient experience agenda might well be one of those, not least of all because we'd like to innovate and get a bit more kind of modern in the whole approach to it. So maybe, John, that's one you could take a note of as being worthy of being woven into the agenda for the informal board meeting at the beginning of February, if time allows. Berenice.
Thanks, Helen. Just on patient experience, I don't think we can ignore the unique way that social media works within this organisation. And actually, if you have the time to actually read through all the comments, the amount of patient experience and feedback that we actually get that's extremely positive through certainly the Facebook page that and Twitter that Sarah's really promoted. So I think we need to capture some of that as well, understanding the obviously delay on friends and family, and that's not always been the best way to receive feedback anyway.
Well, I think we're seeing more of Sarah's magic being sprinkled on all of that. And as an avid reader of each and every one of those comments, it is terrific to have that regularity and candor of feedback and exchange with those who are experiencing our services at first hand. Anything you want to add, Sarah?
I think one thing that has been interesting throughout COVID is what a difference it makes having real, honest and open posts from the hospital that result in that sort of feedback. Yes, there's always negative feedback, and we try and respond to each and every comment, which is no small task. But I think that's really come through that as an organisation we are regarded as incredibly open about the position that we're in and the situation within the hospital at any given day. So I've really been pleased at how we've kind of almost trumped local media, and that people come to our page at first for information.
Well, you know, you need to take a bow around all of that, Sarah. And as Beverly has just put in the chat, there are fabulous outpourings of gratitude from members of teams for their team members or for another team who may have helped in that particular day. And I think that speaks so loudly to a really positive culture of teamwork and appreciation of each other. So it's been lovely to see all of that too. So thank you, Beverly, for drawing our attention to that. Tony.
Thanks, Helen. I was just going to add a comment, certainly from the Improvement Academy point of view. I'll have a chat with Maria about how best to better promote the degree of engagement with patients, because that's certainly part of the approach. So whether it's cancer pathways or emergency care pathways, the patient is involved in some of the design work and reflections. We just need to make it clear that that's happening. And in recent days, myself, Berenice and Leah have been talking about how the improvement resource may better support the ED department in exactly the way you described. So just to provide you that assurance.
Thank you very much, Tony. That's very helpful. So our colleagues content that we leave the patient and staff experience report there. Yep, thank you very much. And we're going to move on now to item 9, which is the stroke review report. Hal.
Excuse me. Thank you. So this is an update, I suppose, regarding the Trust's stroke services. I trust that people will have read the paper, and board members know that we've had extensive discussions previously regarding stroke, which followed on from an invited service review by the Royal College of Physicians because of concerns we had internally regarding our stroke services and some of the weaknesses within the stroke services. This paper, I hope, provides assurance that we have a comprehensive plan, much of which is already enacted, and that as a result of that plan, I feel we now have significant assurance regarding the stroke service going forwards, and particularly regarding the concerns about mortality a year or two ago, which the paper illustrates is now no longer an active concern. I don't mean mortality isn't a concern, but I mean that the current figures suggest that the Trust care and mortality is within normal expected range, and so that we haven't got a current issue. So I'm happy to take questions, but in the spirit of this meeting, I'm not going to.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hal. And as you say, this must be at least the 4th or 5th, if not 5th time this has come before the board in some of our more informal sessions, and indeed has been the matter of great scrutiny by the Quality Assurance Committee. I'd like to thank you for the clarity of today's report, Hal. It's very, very clear about what it is we've done, what it is we failed to do, and what it is we intend to do in the future. And the appending of the action plan, I think, gives us great comfort around all of that. So very grateful to you for having brought that clarity to bear, and indeed for the assurance of the extent to which you have reached out to the system, because of course stroke services are under a lot of pressure system-wide. So it's going to be important that we lever each other's help and support. So if I may go to Jane, please. I'm sure you'll have something to add as Chair of the Quality Committee.
Thank you, Helen. And you referred to it earlier in terms of talking about Quality Assurance Committee as well. And I just wanted to make a couple of points. One was that we have also examined the assurance processes to make sure that we have done the right things in a timely manner when we have identified that there was some improvement work required on stroke. And I think we have been into that in some depth, and that's been shown that we as a board have acted really quite swiftly. People will know that the HASU was set up in June, and that we now have a detailed action plan which is attached to this report to actually continue that improvement work. I think it's really important to emphasise that the service is very safe. The mortality is, you can see, is reducing. It's really within normal parameters, and actually that the work we need to do is really about improvement of the quality of care, and this is not a patient safety matter. So I would like to thank Hal for the work that he's done. I think he's responded really quickly. He's also taken advice from the system, and this is clearly not just a hospital matter, but we are part of a stroke network, so it is a system matter as well. So I think it's really coming together really well. We've now also sorted out the matter of leadership in terms of consultant cover, so that in itself is also really, really positive. So I think we are definitely moving forward. We've still got some work to do on the action plan, but we are absolutely assured through our examination of this through Quality Assurance Committee and through the board that we're moving this in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Jane. Any other comments or questions from the board? Not at this juncture. Well, Jane.
If I could just comment, Helen, just to say that, you know, my thanks not only for the production of the paper, but all of the work that has been going on around stroke, because this has been very much a team effort, and I'm only a very small part of that. And so I'd like to thank all of those people who are involved in trying to, you know, really give the best possible stroke care for all of our patients.
Well, thank you for that, Hal, and please convey our thanks to your colleagues too. And I suppose just to make a statement now of the obvious, that as a board we will need to track through the delivery of these actions until such a time as we're absolutely satisfied with regard to the quality of the service, and indeed that we give proper consideration to what additional steps might be needed by way of a system solution to ensure the long-term sustainability of the service. But we will look forward to future reports to the board, and we'll leave it in Jane and Hal's capable hands about the timing of that coming back onto our agenda. So thank you very much for that. If I might go now, please, to item 10, which is the maternity deep dive and the response to Ockenden. Krishna, please.
Thank you very much. So yes, this is absolutely a response to Ockenden. So all NHS trusts have been required to pull papers together in this format by NHSEI, and the requirement is to go through board and then from sign off and then go out to the NHSEI with our actions. So this is a request. So this is a report from Donna Ockenden, who was requested to review maternity services at Shrewsbury and Telford from 2017, and as an interim emerging actions, all trusts were asked to pull information together. On the front page of the report, there are 7 key immediate and essential actions that we've had to sort of gauge ourselves against and do a gap analysis. And some of these are already in train, so the likes of CNST plays a big part in it. All the work that from a transformation that we do from maternity services is where we are. But actually there are a number of new aspects to this. So there's a whole range of new requirements, which is why we are partially compliant. And whilst it was really important for us to have that level and deep dive at our Quality Assurance Committee on Monday to be able to put in context where we were. So we were never going to be a sea of green, but what this paper is, the purpose of this paper is to demonstrate to the Trust Board that we have assessed where we are as an organisation against these new and emerging actions, that we've got, in addition to that, that we have able to demonstrate where we are from our CNST, where we have made good progress, and where we are sort of about the 13 NICE guidance that have been issued over the previous sort of 5 years, where we are in relation to that, where we've made good progress, and our workforce. I can go into some of the details of that, but there was a really good and really robust conversation with the care unit who provided the details here. Jo Hadley, who is the part of the DLT, is our head of midwifery, provided a really good, robust sort of, we had a really good confirm and challenge about where we are against a number of these. We have, so this is the paper that went to our meeting on Monday. There were a couple of additional aspects that we would probably want to change in the light of the conversations that we had. But we felt that it did provide significant assurance on where we were as an organisation. What I also wanted sort of to draw out is the real positives about what a safe service we've got and how we can demonstrate that. So that's not just about the really positive CQC inspection that we had sort of last February. It's also the work that we've had from, you know, real positive position from a workforce point of view. We've got above and beyond our establishment. We've over recruited, if you like, for a reason. The complexity of our women, their underlying comorbidities, is something that we're seeing as a national picture. But with those increased complexities, we will more than likely require more workforce. And at the moment, we're going through what we call a birth rate plus, which is the specific tool that identifies the ratio of midwives to our women, and that will inform sort of what potential further resource we might need. Another aspect that we drew out from a workforce was that there is a requirement for more obstetrician sort of input, and we're just starting to do that work now as to what that might look like. But we need to, we're already doing ward rounds twice a day on the midweek. We need to ensure that we have that right the way, so that fits in with our 7-day services plan as well. Some real positives, there's some real positive indicators that I wanted to draw out, and it was a really positive meeting. So one of the indicators that we're looking at, and one of the conversations and the outcomes from our Quality Assurance Committee, was our need for a dashboard and how that will be coming to board on a regular basis in the form of an IPR, and what that will look like. And we've already I've already met with Lisa from the governance team to pull that into the draft that we will consider our February Quality Assurance Committee, for committee members to agree what that will look like going forward in an IPR. There is an action plan, so it looks quite a lengthy report. There's a large action plan, but that's needed. That's the assurance framework and document that we have to work with. We recognise also that we need to pull that out into smart actions for that to go through the Quality Assurance Committee, and prior to that it will be going through our quality delivery group, ready for that assurance to present that from assurance point of view from our Quality Assurance Committee. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Krishna. Before we do, Jane, is there anything you'd like to add?
And that was a fantastic summary. Thank you very much, Krishna. I think just to reiterate that we did go through the report that you have before you almost line by line, and that we had members of the care unit present. So we had consultants, midwives, neonatologists, as well as Quality Assurance Committee members, so that everybody could contribute to our response and be clear that our response was an accurate representation of our position. So I'm very happy that the document that you have before you that's been submitted about our level of assurance has really been very well scrutinised. Just in summary, I'd like to just support Krishna to say there were 3 very key areas that we'll need to come back to the Trust Board with. One is about the visibility of maternity services to the board, so getting the balance between what's reviewed at QAC, Quality Assurance Committee, and what's reviewed by the board. We need to get that right. So you will see, I believe, more maternity reporting coming to board, and we will enable board members to make sure that our understanding of those metrics that go into any dashboard, you know, is there, because clearly Ockenden, the board were perhaps not as well cited on the meaning of some of the metrics, and so misinterpreted them at Shrewsbury and Telford. So I think it's really important that we have that full understanding as a board. And the second thing is definitely about resources. It's clear that we have got a shortfall in resource on obstetric cover, but there'll also be implication for other services as well, including midwifery services, and that will fit with one of the risks on the risk register around the continuity of care for mums and babies. The third area and the final area that I just wanted to highlight is about environment. We've got a fantastic offer to our mums around the birth centre, and also about the resource from our staff and the care that's given, and that's demonstrated through the feedback we get. but we do have quite a poor environment on the antenatal clinic, and that is contributing to one of our difficulties around achieving all of the care bundles. So I think that if we're looking at capital spend in the future, we really do need to think about what improvements we can make to antenatal care. So with that, again, I'll happy to take questions as well.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Jane. I assume your comment about the risk register is about continuity of carer.
Yes,
we're
yes.
already assuming we're already
Yes.
achieving continuity of care. Yeah.
So we're not achieving it, Helen, and it's on.
We're not achieving continuity of carer.
Yes, we're not achieving continuity of carer, and it's on the risk register. Can I just say, sorry, Helen, there was one other thing I wanted to say, that is a massive thanks to the staff. This has hit at a time when we were already overwhelmed with COVID. It came in December. It's a massive response that's been required. The parameters have been moved around the deadline, which I know has kind of taken the wind out of the sails for some of the staff a little bit this week. But there's great enthusiasm for doing whatever quality improvement matters fall from this report. And I really just wanted to commend the staff. So that's everybody from Krishna, Joe Hadley, to Indranil, the consultant, to midwifery lead, to neonatologist, because it has been massive. And I can't underestimate how much work's gone into it.
Thank you, Jane. Angie.
And can I just add, because she won't thank herself, Jane's thanks for that. So she stepped up to take on that NED role, but also that Jane and Krishna have worked with colleagues at UHDB. So this one we've responded to as a system as well, and jointly as two acutes, which I think is really important to note. And my other observation, listening to the conversation on Monday, which was very thorough, and I realised how old I was since I last practiced as a midwife, but just some of that context that we put around numbers in an IPR and the learning from Shrewsbury and Telford, that they thought they had a really good section rate, which they did, but hadn't set it in the context of their population and what it meant and change in practice. And it's just that I know Jane and Krishna and the team are doing it, but just to make sure we think as a board how we get that context around the data that we're seeing as well in the IPR.
Thanks, Angie. Anybody else want to come in on this item? No. Well, thank you again for all the hard work by everybody who's contributed, and thank you also for the assurance about the fact that we're going to get the right level of information about our maternity services at the board going forward. That's much appreciated. So that brings us on to any other business within which we've got consent items. I haven't had, just for people who are joining the board for the first time, we take a number of matters by consent, including some items on occasion that need decision, but the assumption is that the matter is agreed unless I am advised in advance that a board member wants to raise something. So all of those consent items at 11 are agreed on the basis that I haven't had any prior indication of anybody wishing to discuss them. Which brings us to matters of any other business. Does anybody have any matters of any other business? No. Then brings us to items for information, and they're in your pack for noting. And then that brings us to the next meeting, which, believe it or not, the next meeting of the board in public will be on the 3rd of March at 9:30. And that brings us to the end of our meeting. Now, I've just had notification for Gillian that we haven't had any questions from members of the public, but again, our thanks to you for having joined us this morning. I appreciate it's always a really tricky thing for governors, any governor of any duration, let alone new governors attending board, because ultimately, of course, as governors, you hold the board to account. But yet, when you come to a board meeting, all the conventions of this being a meeting in public rather than a public meeting need to be observed. So inevitably, it is only at this point of the meeting that we're able to come to you for any comments you might have on the meeting. And also, we always review each meeting about, how we did, what we did, what we failed to do, what was the, to what extent did we model the behaviours in leading the Chesterfield Way and how we conducted our meeting. So we have a few minutes for reflection on that at every meeting. And just so you know, if you're a new governor, I always give the opportunity to governors to make those observations first. So I'd like to do that again today. But please take the opportunity in reflecting on the meeting if there's anything of substance you wanted to say about any of the agenda items. So please may I go to Pervez first, please.
Thank you, Helen. For obvious reasons, I don't have access to the board on stroke analysis, but I wonder, it covers the areas such as leadership, happy team working, and clinical coding. There was a small change in the clinical coding on miscoded patients have a significant impact on low volume specialty.
Thank you very much, and we will take that thought away. That's appreciated. Just stepping back now a bit from the substance of our discussions, Pervez, how did you find your first meeting? Are you more or less assured that the board, that the trust is in good hands? Did we do the sort of job you would have expected us to do?
I think it's, on the whole, it is very reassuring that we are customer focused, and we are also focused about our activity and bank balance as well. These are all things which are required for an organization as public.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to come. Graham, how was it for you? I don't know if your mute button's working, Graham, is it? You appear to still be on mute. It's acting up. If you want to put a line or two in the text box, please do, Graham. Pansy, I appreciate you're not a governor, but you've been a very welcome guest at our meeting. Is there anything you'd like to say about how you found it?
I found today's meeting quite informative, and this was the first one. In future, I would love to be just an observer, just to know the activities at board level.
Well, thank you for making the time to be with us. So if I can go back around the board table now, so to speak, how did colleagues find today? Sue?
Thanks, Helen. Just to say, I appreciate we've tried to have a very rapid canter through, but I think we've been able to do that because of the high quality of the papers that we have all, as board members, had chance to read beforehand. So thank you for that, especially when we are in such busy time. So a big thank you to the executive team for great reports to enable such an efficient use of time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Zoe?
Thanks, Helen. I would say I'm thankful that we've taken a really focused approach to both the size of the agenda and the sort of nature of the conversations today. And I don't think that's been to the detriment of the items that we've covered. I think we've done everything justice. And equally, I'm pleased that we managed to go ahead with the board story and that Engineer and Pansy were still able to join us. I think it was important. I was really keen that we could still do that.
Very good. Angie?
Yeah, we're just going to reiterate what Zoe said. It felt like we really have discussed everything we needed to, and also, as well as the quality of papers, that's credit to the subcommittees, because having sat in those, they really are doing a brilliant job at making sure we pull out those key areas to bring for the discussion at board. So thank you to chairs of those.
Thank you, and particularly with the new ways of working there too, as well. So we're trying to keep the board under 2 hours. I know the committees are trying to get to about an hour, so it's a big ask, but the focus is certainly coming through. So thanks for those comments, Angie. Keith?
Yes, Helen, I think I'm probably going to echo what everyone else said. I think I was worried that if we shortened it radically, although we are for all the right reasons, clearly, we would lose the good conversation part of it. You end up talking about things you don't want to, but actually I think it's been really pertinent, and I think we've talked about a phrase my mother used, is the really pithy bits that we needed to talk about. So I think that's really good. So I have really positive feedback, I think, on the shorter version.
Very good, thank you. I thought I saw your hand up earlier, Mike, but maybe it was up and down.
No, it's there. I'm just going to reiterate what everybody else has said. I was a bit nervous about a truncated meeting given the environment we're in, but that was very effective. And it's, as has been said, quality of the papers and the quality of the subcommittee dialogue has been excellent. So well done to everybody.
Well, I think on that note, not least of all, is we do want to release our executive colleagues on their day and all the pressures that are in front of you, to know that you go with our huge thanks and appreciation for everything you're doing so very well. And, you know, we don't have to rely on board papers as an opportunity to raise any request for help or support. That can be done at any time, and that we're, you know, at your service. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you, Helen.